My great pleasure this morning to introduce our speaker this morning is Ed Kilbourne. Ed is here with his wife Kathleen, who will also be participating in this service as our celebrant for communion. And they will be with us not all week, but through Wednesday, leading our adult vacation Bible school. I think some of you have signed up. There's still places to sign up. You can still do it. We still have room. And we'll probably have enough food. Food's never really a problem in the Methodist Church, so come on and be a part of it. But we first get to hear Ed. I met Ed, I think, in 1994. Yeah, he says I was like 12 then, which I like that. I was just a baby. I was in my first church in Marlborough County. John Culp introduced us. That tells you something about him and me, that we hold John Culp as a mutual friend, and we both love John. But I'm pleased that Ed's with us, and I'm looking forward to him. Floor's yours.
Hear the word made fresh this morning, Eugene Peterson's translation of the first few verses of the 8th chapter of John. A story about Jesus walking around Jerusalem, people following him everywhere. And because he had a crowd, he sat and taught them. And while he was doing this, the religious scholars and Pharisees led in a woman who had been caught in the act. The act of adultery. They stood her in plain sight of everyone and said, "Teacher, this woman was caught red-handed." And the Bible clearly says in Leviticus that we are to stone her. So what do you say? You see, they were trying to trap Jesus into saying something incriminating so they could bring charges against him. But Jesus bent down and wrote with his finger in the dirt. But they kept at it, badgering him until finally he stood up and said, Okay, the sinless one among you, go first. Go first, throw that stone. Then he bent down again and wrote some more in the dirt. Hearing what Jesus said, they walked away, one after another, beginning with the oldest. The woman was left alone with Jesus. Finally, Jesus stood up and spoke to her. He said, "Woman, where are they? Does no one condemn you?" "No one, Master," she said. "Well, neither do I," said Jesus. "Neither do I. You go on your way, and from now on, don't sin." Does anyone condemn you? "No one, Master." "Well, neither do I," said Jesus. "Neither do I." This is the word of God for the people of God. And we say, thanks be to God. For many years, I've been hanging out in this neighborhood. I've been visiting this neighborhood for all of my career. I think my earliest dates were somewhere 50, maybe even as long back as 60 years ago, somewhere around Greenville, South Carolina. Back in the day, when you visited a place, there was usually a place where you could go to get the story. to hear what people were feeling and thinking. I mean, you go down to the town square. There was a little bench, and the old timers would sit and whittle and spit. And if you sat there long enough, you would hear. You could sit on the loading dock over at the Feed and Seed, or maybe there's a little cafe that early and before the dawn, if you went in and just sat and listened, you could feel the heartbeat of a community. Over the last few years, we've even given up talking over the back fence. It's social media. That's where we gather. That's, if you're going to hang out, you hang out online. So it becomes a problem if you're a storyteller to find places to get your story right. And because he was a storyteller, I've thought about this and invite you to think too that he had to spend probably more time listening to people than talking to people. Because every one of us is a story. One of the things he figured out is if you go down to the marketplace, that's where they are. Just wander around the market, watch people. That's where he learned one of the most important things that he taught. That's where he learned that if you want to find out what people believe and what they value, don't listen to what they say. Watch them shop. See where we spend our money. That's where he came up with the line, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. So he was hanging out. He was listening for the story, headed for the supermarket, except he made maybe a poor decision, because he went one afternoon, late in the afternoon, and everybody was there. And they only had one checkout line open. Why did they do that? I mean, they had the 12 items or less thing or whatever, but he had a basket full. And he got stuck in a line of other people waiting their turn. 3 ladies in front of him, which didn't bother him because it gave him time. He wanted to see, he wanted to listen, he wanted to learn. And since the 3 ladies in front of him were also waiting, they'd left their carts. They'd gone over to the magazine rack. And one of them had gotten one of these little magazines, one of these little newspaper things down off there. You know what they have at the checkout counter? You know, those whatever they are. You don't actually buy those things, but you see them. They've got pictures of aliens on the front. That's the one. Or a Kardashian. Which, have you noticed, have started to look a lot alike. I mean, but one of the women was reading this little circular, this little newspaper, reading to her 2 friends, and they were laughing so hard they like to fall down in the aisle. Humor. Well, Jesus thought, humor. That's one of the things you need to know. What do people think is funny? I mean, he was looking for some new material himself. He had a joke. He had a joke that he'd been using that was just not working for him at all. But he loved it. He'd say, how many Samaritans does it take to change a light bulb? And they'd say, how many? And Jesus would say, just one. If he's good. See, maybe that's why Jesus didn't tell jokes. People just staring at you going, one if he's good. I don't get it. One if he's good. Oh, good Samaritan. Oh, good Samaritan. Okay. Don't laugh now. It's too late. But he was curious, and he knew it would be rude to go over and ask them what was so funny. So he thought maybe if he could somehow get a look at the front of this little newspaper they were reading, maybe he could see what it was. So he goes around one of the displays, and he could see on the front of this little circular magazine, on the front was a picture of the man that used to be the president of the United States way, way back in the day, Bill Clinton. Some of you go back that far. Bill Clinton on the front of this magazine, but then he saw down in the corner there was a little quarter panel, a picture of a woman, and he could just see a name, a title, Monica. Well, he didn't know what that was about. But when he heard the women laughing, he remembered. Because it was the exact same laugh that he had heard years before, only that time it was a group of men laughing at a woman who they said had been having an affair. And he told the men to hush. He said, y'all, just be quiet. He said, you want to laugh? You want to laugh? Then I want the first laugh to come from one of you men that's never imagined doing something like that yourself. Well, they got quiet. And then, well, read the story. They got embarrassed. And then one by one, they left. He was alone with her there, and finally he said to her, he said, you're going to be okay. They're gone. He said, now it's time for you to go too. But then he added, you know, you don't have to live like that anymore. You know this story? No matter how it's told, everybody knows this story. We've heard it taught, we've heard it preached. And one of the reasons everybody knows the story is the line where it says, how does it go? Let he who is without sin. How often have we said that? Everybody knows this story. But as a storyteller, as often as I've heard this story and as often as I've taught it, I've got a problem with the story. Without going into great detail, just let me simply tell you how a story works. You got a problem, you got a challenge, you got a conflict, and you start describing it, and people start leaning forward because they want to see what you're going to do with the story. That's what a story is conflict and resolution. And a good story is when you're waiting and waiting, and you finally find out what happens next until the end. Now that's a good story. Well, my problem with this story is it just stops in the middle. And we never find out what happened. Where'd she go? This woman. Where'd she go? And how did that go and sin no more work out for you? That would be an interesting story. But we don't know. And what about those men? They walk off, but certainly they're mumbling, they're talking amongst themselves. Can't you just hear them as they're walking away? maybe even a little bit angry, embarrassed, that somebody had had the nerve to question their Second Amendment rights to bear stones. The story just stops in the middle. This morning, my friends, I'd like to suggest that that's how the gospel works. Because that story stops where your story and my story begins. That story becomes our story. Because we've been there. We have been there. Surrounded, perhaps, by those who would accuse us. Caught by the consequences of our choices or behavior. Or sometimes because most of all our stories are secrets that only a few, if any, know. We keep them to ourselves, but we are still imprisoned by our unwillingness to be forgiven. We've been there. That's our story. And the men too. How long have I stood with cold stones of judgment in my hand, so proud of the fact that my side was the right side. Our story, your story, my story. So the next time you read this story, I want you to notice that in this story, when all those men were laughing, Jesus did not join them. In this story, Jesus chose sides, and it was not the side of justice. It was the side of mercy. He chose her side. Indeed, I do believe, as Paul Harvey used to say, that is the rest of the story. I do believe wherever she went from that day, he was with her. But I would add, he was with them too. The men who walked away, they never forgot. And even this morning, in the middle of our story, Jesus has chosen us. They say this woman showed up again. They believe it was her that came in one evening while Jesus and his friends were having supper. They believe it was this woman who knelt and bathed his feet with her tears. You can have my heart. It isn't new. It's been bruised and broken. It only comes in blue. It's been down a long road. Got dirty on the way. If I give it to you, will you wash it clean? Take the stain away. You can have my heart if you don't mind broken things. You can have my life if you don't mind these tears. give these pieces all to you. If you want it, you can have my heart. So beyond repair, nothing I could do. I tried to fix it myself, but it was only worse when I got through. You walked right into my darkness, speaking words so sweet. You held me like a child till my frozen tears fell down at your feet. You can have my heart if you don't mind broken things. You can have my life if you don't mind these tears. I hear you make all things new, so I give these pieces all to you. If you want it, you can have my heart. If you want it, you can have my heart.
Hello, I'm Russell Freeman. I'm the senior pastor here at Advent United Methodist Church, and we are so happy you chose to join us for online worship today. And we hope you had a wonderful experience in doing so. We would love for you to come down and join us on a Sunday morning at the Five Forks campus here in Simpsonville on Woodruff Road. We have worship services at 9 a.m. and 10:30 a.m. We have offerings for children, for youth, and for adults. Also, you can learn so much more about us at our webpage at advent-umc.org. Can't wait to see you and get to know you better here at Advent United Methodist Church as we work to make disciples and grow God's kingdom.